Well, welcome everybody to Breakout Block number 5. I am Catherine Boyle with Key Ministry. Thank you for joining in this particular segment of Quick Takes. And our first presenter in this block is Reverend Dr. Topher Endress. He has been invested in disability theology and ministry since 2007, working to integrate and support disabled Christians in accessing the fullness of the church. He received his MDiv from Vanderbilt in 2015 and a PhD in theological ethics from the University of Aberdeen in the UK in 2021. He has written numerous academic papers on disabilities, and his first book, Accompanying Disability, Caretaking, Family, and Faith, will be released in April 2025, so it should be out. And that's from Westminster John Knox Press. Topher has worked as a congregational minister, a parachurch leader, a caregiver, a researcher and organizer, all with the intent of widening the doors of the church that all would find welcome. And his presentation today will be on disability-informed caretaking. Welcome, Topher.
Hello, everyone. So to begin, my name is Topher Endress, and I, for those with any low vision or visual impairments, I'm a white guy of relatively slim build and average height with dark brown and pretty gray long hair and a beard. I've got on a black t-shirt that reads First Christian Church, which is where I currently serve as a congregational minister. My title slide is chaotic looking stripes that kind of look like runny paint in charcoal, green, blue, yellow, and red, which you might also know as the disability pride flag colors. And under those, it's the words disability-informed caregiving. So I say this because it's helpful for access for all people to be able to know what I'm talking about, even if they can't see it. And I'll also start by acknowledging that I'm a minister, so I should be fairly comfortable with public speaking, but I also come from a pretty high liturgical context, so it feels a little weird to be on a stage and not behind a pulpit, and I keep wondering why I'm not wearing a robe and stoles. So if you want to make me really feel comfortable, feel free to spontaneously form a chancel choir, maybe start playing an organ or start swinging some incense up and down the aisles. Any way you can do that, it'll make me feel a lot more homey. So I have a question for you all. Who would like to tell me how you got to MBC today? Uber? You drove? Did anyone do anything that wasn't based in a car? Just me? Perfect. So you all listened to the comms team and to Lara way better than I did. She and they were very clear from the get-go that this was too far away for people to plan on walking if you were staying at a hotel. My problem is that I am very cheap and I am very stubborn and I have a lot of unearned confidence. So I knew that I could walk here. And so I went to Google Street Maps to verify that I wasn't going to be walking on an interstate, which is illegal, don't do that. But I did decide to walk here, and it was lovely. This has a point, but just to note, the walk was beautiful. It was warm and just a hint of wind. The path was smooth. It was really nicely kept. The sidewalks were off the road, so it felt really safe. And there was, in the middle of it, this lovely pedestrian bridge, which I've put a photo up, and you can see that it's a very straight, flat bridge with high metal sides under a cloudy blue sky with bright green trees in the distance. So as I was walking, I thought about who could and could not have joined me on that walk. Several people who are here, I'm sure, probably could have. It's about a 1.3 mile walk, mostly flat. And other people could not. And there's no moral difference between who could and could not make that walk. But I'm someone who regularly runs long distances, and I used to live in Europe where everybody walks everywhere. And so for me, this didn't feel unmanageable. But then I thought about my family, and I thought about, could my wife have made this walk? Yes. What about my children? Begrudgingly, they wouldn't have liked it, but they could have done it. My mother, she loves to walk, so she would have happily done this. Could my father have made this walk? No, because he's dead. But also, because before he died, he was a quadriplegic. And that makes a huge difference. Because his first question would have been, is 1.3 miles too far for my wheelchair's battery? What would I do if it died? And then his second thought would have been, it's pretty warm out. What if I get dehydrated? Dehydration's really critical for a quadriplegic. And what happens if I start to sweat? If I start to sweat and it gets underneath me, between me and my seat, that could cause some very serious rashes, leading to bed sores. That could be potentially fatal. And then he would think, well, I also have a catheter. What happens if my bag gets full? Is there a place where I can empty it discreetly? And what happens if I find even one little step? Are you absolutely positive, absolutely 100% sure that there is not a single step that you have to cross if you're going to go from the hotel that I'm staying at to MBC? And are you willing to stake my life on it? Because if there's a step, I'm stuck. As it turns out, this picture is not, oh, it is loading. As it turns out, I was wrong. There was a step. I thought that this was an accessible path, but I didn't realize. As I was walking, there's one area where you have to leave the sidewalk, cut through a parking lot, and it's well marked and well separated so that you're not going to get hit by a car. But as I was walking back to my hotel yesterday, I saw that the last 2 cones of this strip had been knocked over, and that they were blocking the only accessible place where you could get back onto the sidewalk, and that every other place that you would go had steps. And so if I was in my father's wheelchair, or if he was out alone, he could not pass over those. He would not have been able to cover that ground. So what does this tell us? Number one, it tells you that I am in fact fallible, which I know is shocking. It's as shocking to you all as it was to me, I'm sure. It also tells us that the path was not accessible. And why does that matter? Why does it matter if I was wrong about this particular path? I'm glad you didn't ask. So, we're talking about caregiving. When it comes to caregiving, we can think about being respectful and thinking about caring for our people really well. That means that we're attending to their physical needs, we're attending to their emotional and spiritual needs as well. And in order to do that, we have some general guidelines. We can think about, in this first blue bubble here, the words, who is believable? Who is believable? Whose narrative of the world do we trust? Is it mine? Is it yours? If we're giving appropriate care, we should be able to believe the people we're providing care for. In the middle there, in the green bubble, we've got dictating pace. As I said, I'm a runner. Yesterday I went on a run past NBC. I went down to Wolf Trap Park. It was gorgeous, and I ran at a certain pace that other people would find inaccessible. But I'm not the fastest runner, so there are other people who could be running much faster than me. If they're providing care to me, I would expect that they would run at my pace. And if I was with my dad using an electric wheelchair, or someone else who's not ambulatory in a very quick way, then I should be expected to go at their pace. So whoever gets to set that pace, right, that should be in our mind of giving appropriate care. That's the person who should get to dictate. And finally, leadership and autonomy. If we're going to give appropriate care, there is a sense of leadership within that caregiving role. But we don't get to lead over everything, right? People should get the right to make their own choices and have that autonomy. And we have to figure out that tension in the caregiving role. So how do we do this? How do we provide good care in a way that is disability informed and justice based? Now, having been a caregiver for multiple disabled people in the past, one significant difference between caregiving in the disability community and, say, caring for 2 young children is that the disability community has, over time, constructed a series of justice-based bullet points that they have determined are important for providing appropriate care if you're going to come alongside their community. So we're going to go through these very, very quickly. These are not legal structures. These are not set in stone. These are not universally agreed upon. But these are 5 that I've pulled that I feel have strongly influenced my own caregiving relationships and have kept me making the appropriate boundaries and giving space to the disabled people that I care for in a way that leads to justice. So the first one here in the green bubble says, "Nothing about us without us." That is a slogan that has been politically operative for a number of decades, but effectively it just means that if I'm going to be trying to take somebody down a path, I don't get to be the one who decides if it's accessible. The person who's impacted, they are the ones who get to decide. They have the right, they get to determine for themselves if that's an appropriate path and is accessible or not. The second one here is no single experiences. This means that we have to remember that you're not just disabled. You're not just a caregiver. For me, I'm a white man who's a caregiver, right? You might be a black mother who is disabled. You might be a disabled new immigrant. You have multiple stories inside you. God has created you with multiple things that you get to own and claim, that influence the gifts you've been given, that influence the way that your story gets shared in this world and influences the way people see God through you. So nobody is just disabled or just a caregiver. Everybody has a multiplicity. Third, in the blue, we have inherent worth. We know that God doesn't tell us that we're worth something because we can sell a certain number of books or we can earn a certain amount or our GPA is over a certain level, right? We know that God tells us we have worth because we belong to God. That's true whether you are disabled or not, but too often the story we tell about disability is that they aren't producing enough, they aren't productive, they're not earning their keep, and therefore they're worth less. This is a lie, and we know this is a lie, and we as a church have to call out that lie. Fourth, no body or mind is the right body or mind. Everybody has a different embodiment. Everyone's a little bit different, and that's part of the glory of God's good creation. God creates things to be diverse and to be different, and we would be in a much flatter, boring, grayer world if we did not all carry different things about us. God created you to have your body and mind, which means no one else's body and mind is right for you other than your own. And so we have to uplift and accept and welcome that difference and treat it as something good and positive because it comes from God. Finally, no one left behind in the yellow bubble there. This means that no matter the disability, no matter the hardship, no matter the complexity, no matter what services and supports are needed, no matter who you are, whether you're a caregiver or if you're disabled, no matter what that relationship looks like, you are not to be left behind. You are to be included. And in our churches, we can be the site of something radical. Radical inclusion, welcoming people in ways that they will never be welcomed in school. They'll never be welcomed in the workplace. And I'm not just talking about disability here. I'm talking about all forms of diversity. Anyone who is excluded for any reason can find solace in the church because we know to look for their heart and we know to look for God's presence in their life. So we can be the trendsetters. We can set what is expected across the world. We don't have to leave anyone behind because they're too hard to deal with. And that is the wonderful thing about the church. So one thing that I want to get into is just one example here of what it would look like to be disability informed in your caregiving. I apologize, I don't think this is readable from that dark of a font. But the first one in the red bubble says, think about caregiving for maybe an elderly mother who's experiencing dementia, right? Degenerative disabilities are very real. So your elderly mother with dementia that you're providing care for wants to go and visit her sister who is deceased. Go and visit her sister who lives in Oregon. Now, naturally, common sense-wise, we're here in Tyson's Corner, Virginia. She's walking down the street and she said, I'm going to go and visit my sister who lives in Oregon. I need to see her right now. Well, she can't do that. She can't leave. She can't run away. That's a flight risk. That's unsafe. We need to care for her and protect her in this moment. But we also need to honor and respect. So how do we do that using those principles of justice that we just talked about? Well, the first thing would be believe her. She needs to see her sister. She's not wrong. She wants to see her, and that's a good thing. We can affirm that. Now, we don't have to harp on the fact that her sister's deceased, that it's impossible. We can just acknowledge and accept and say, we believe you. And then the second thing is we can give her autonomy and agency to say, sure, you want to do this. Let's do it together. How do you want to do it? I'm going to come with you. Can we go pack a bag together? Can we go look at flights together? Can we go gas up the car? And when you do things like this, when you believe them, when you offer justice, when you accept that they are autonomous people who have inherent worth, it changes your relationship to them as a caregiver. And it makes you more receptive to their needs, but also more receptive to the opportunity that they bring into your life. So, if you take nothing else, all I want you to know is that to be disability informed as caregivers, we have to start with agency. This is the fundamental point to take home. Start with agency. Believe somebody, accept that they're a real person, full and filled with God's love, filled with God's handiwork, and that they deserve the full right and responsibility that comes with that. When you can start there, then we can add in the rest of those disability justice principles, and we can become that much better at giving care. But ultimately, if we can start with giving one another agency, we will start to see the kingdom of God coming out through those relationships as we're providing better and better care. Thank you.